Level 1, the Locksmith's Son. You're standing in the service corridor of the Antwerp Diamond Centre at 2:14 in the morning, wearing a maintenance uniform you bought from a retired janitor for $400, and you're 11 minutes away from stealing $127 million in uncut diamonds. Your hands are steady. Your breathing is controlled. Your heart rate is somewhere around 88, which is elevated but functional. The corridor smells like floor wax and recycled air. The security door in front of you has a 10-digit keypad, a magnetic lock rated to 1,200 pounds of force, and an infrared motion sensor mounted 6 inches above the frame. You're going to bypass all three in the next 4 minutes, using tools that cost you less than a used car. You've been planning this for 2 years. Every night for 2 years you've thought about this hallway, this door, this moment. And now that you're here, the only thing in your head is the combination. 8317-052946. You punch it in. The light turns green. The lock clicks. The door opens. And everything you've been for the last 38 years stops mattering. You grew up in Marseille. Your father was a locksmith who operated a shop on Rue de la République that smelled like brass shavings and machine oil. He taught you how locks worked before he taught you how to read. Tumblers, pins, tension wrenches, the geometry of security. You could pick a standard pin tumbler lock by the time you were 11. By 14, you understood electromagnetic locking systems well enough to explain them to adults. Your father thought he was training a successor. He was training something else. He died when you were 19. Heart attack in the shop, alone, on a Tuesday afternoon. You found him when you came to close up. The shop key was still in his hand. You buried him with it because you couldn't pry his fingers open and you didn't want to. The diamond trade found you, not the legitimate side. The other architecture, the network of fences, couriers, and buyers who move stones outside the certification system. You started as a courier at 22, carrying pouches of uncut diamonds from Antwerp to Tel Aviv, in the lining of a jacket your mother had modified with hidden seams. The pay was $3,000 per trip. You made 14 trips before the man who hired you, a Belgian named Croft, offered you something different. He said your skills were wasted on transportation. He said a man who understood locks, the way you understood them, was more valuable inside a vault than on a plane. The first job was small. A private dealer in Amsterdam who kept his inventory in a safe that was 30 years old and hadn't been serviced in a decade. You opened it in 7 minutes using a technique your father had taught you for emergency lockouts. Inside was $340,000 in certified stones. You took them. Croft moved them through his network. Your cut was $60,000. You sent $10,000 to your mother without explaining where it came from. She didn't ask because asking would mean knowing, and knowing would mean her son was something other than what she'd told her friends at church. The jobs escalated the way they always do when someone discovers they're exceptional at something illegal. A jewelry store in Brussels, a dealer's private residence in Geneva, a bonded warehouse in Rotterdam where you defeated a biometric lock by lifting a fingerprint from a glass the facility manager had used at a restaurant 3 days earlier. You developed the print on a gelatin sheet and wore it over your index finger like a second skin. The scanner accepted it on the first try. Total time inside the warehouse, 19 minutes. Total value extracted, $2.1 million. Your cut, $380,000. You were 27. You'd made more money in 5 years of theft than your father made in 30 years of honest work. The comparison sat in your chest like something you'd swallowed that wouldn't dissolve. Level 2, the crew. Croft built a team around you. Not a crew in the cinematic sense. No characters, no nicknames, no camaraderie. A logistics operation. Gavin handled intelligence, surveillance, schedules, access patterns, the informational architecture of a target. He was a former insurance investigator who'd switched sides after his firm denied a cancer patient's claim, and he decided the industry deserved what it got. He never said this directly. You pieced it together from the way he talked about insurance companies, which was the way some people talk about diseases. Then there was Noor. She handled documentation, forged credentials, fake work orders, the paper trail that got you inside buildings before the locks even mattered. She was 33, Moroccan Dutch, had a degree in graphic design from the University of Amsterdam that she'd never used for anything legal. She was meticulous in a way that made your own meticulousness look casual. Level 3, the vault. The Antwerp job was Croft's idea. He'd been circling the Diamond Centre for a decade. The building held 160 vaults belonging to individual dealers and trading companies. The combined value on any given night fluctuated between $100 million and $400 million, depending on market cycles and trading activity. The security system was considered one of the most sophisticated in Europe. Seismic sensors in the vault floor, magnetic field detectors on the doors, infrared motion grids, a dedicated security team monitoring 24 hours, multiple combination locks requiring sequential access codes. The building was designed to be impenetrable, and for 80 years, it had been. Croft believed the vulnerability was human, not mechanical. Every system is operated by people, and people have patterns. The night security team consisted of 3 guards who rotated on 8-hour shifts. The senior guard, a man named Peter, had been working the overnight shift for 9 years. He made his rounds on a schedule so consistent you could set a watch by his footsteps. He reached the vault corridor at 1:15 a.m., completed his check in 12 minutes, and didn't return until 3:15. That 2-hour window was the entire operation. Gavin spent 6 months building the intelligence package. He rented an office in the building under a shell company that traded in industrial abrasives. $1,400 a month for a room he used exclusively to study the building's rhythms. He documented guard rotations, cleaning schedules, delivery times, the specific hours when the vault corridor was accessible and when it was sealed. He identified the camera blind spots by mapping the surveillance layout against the building's architectural plans, which Noor obtained from the city planning office by filing a public records request under the name of a fictional architectural firm. You spent 4 months on the vault, not the physical vault, a replica you built in a rented warehouse outside Brussels using the specifications Gavin provided. You constructed mock-ups of the locking mechanisms from manufacturer schematics that Noor acquired through a contact at the lock company's European distributor. You practiced the bypass sequence until your hands could perform it in the dark, which was relevant because you'd be performing it in near darkness to avoid triggering the light-sensitive sensors in the vault corridor. The combination came from the retired janitor. Not directly. He'd worked in the building for 22 years and had been terminated 3 years earlier during a staffing reduction. He was 64, living on a pension that didn't cover his rent, and willing to talk about the building's layout over drinks that you paid for across 6 evenings in a bar near Central Station. He didn't give you the vault combination. He gave you something more valuable. He told you where the combination was written down. A maintenance log in the building manager's office, page 47, penciled in the margin next to a note about the HVAC system. He'd seen it 5 years ago during a repair call and remembered it because remembering things was what 22 years in a building does to you. You verified it through Gavin's office access. Page 47. Penciled in the margin, 8-317-052946. The most sophisticated vault in Europe, protected by a combination written in pencil in a maintenance log that anyone with building access could read. Level 4. The Heist. The night of the job, February. Temperature outside is 2 degrees Celsius. Gavin is in a car 3 blocks away, monitoring police frequencies and the building's external communications. Noor is in the office upstairs, logged into the building's network through a device she'd installed in the server room 2 weeks earlier during a simulated fire alarm that she'd triggered herself. Her job is to loop the corridor cameras for the duration of the operation. Your job is everything else. You enter the vault corridor at 1:27 a.m. Peter completed his round 12 minutes ago. You have until 3:15. The infrared sensors are your first obstacle. They detect heat signatures moving through a grid pattern. You defeat them with a polyethylene shield, a sheet of thermal insulation material that masks your body heat and costs $14 at a hardware store. You hold it in front of you as you move through the corridor, a $14 piece of plastic defeating a $200,000 sensor array. Security is always a negotiation between sophistication and simplicity. Simplicity usually wins. The magnetic sensors on the vault door detect any disruption to the magnetic field. You neutralize them with a rare earth magnet positioned against the sensor housing, which overrides the detection circuit by maintaining a constant field regardless of door movement. The magnet cost $30. You ordered it online. The seismic sensors are the most difficult. They detect vibration in the vault floor and walls. Walking triggers them. Breathing doesn't, but the mechanical vibration of a lock being manipulated does. You work the combination lock using a modified tension wrench with a rubber dampening sleeve that absorbs the mechanical vibration of each tumbler engaging. Your father taught you this technique for working on antique safes in clients' homes without triggering vibration-sensitive alarms. He'd developed it for legitimate purposes. You're using it for the opposite. The vault opens at 1:54 a.m. Inside are 160 individual safe deposit boxes arranged in columns along 3 walls. You don't open all of them. You open 1, 2, 3. Each one takes between 15 and 45 seconds, depending on the lock type. You work systematically, left wall to back wall to right wall, filling nylon bags with loose diamonds, sealed parcels, certified stones in dealer envelopes. You don't take jewelry. Jewelry is identifiable. Loose stones are anonymous. They have no serial numbers, no tracking devices, no way to prove provenance once they leave the vault. A diamond is a diamond. That's what makes them perfect to steal. You're inside the vault for 67 minutes. When you walk out, you're carrying approximately $127 million in diamonds distributed across 4 nylon bags that weigh a combined 11 pounds. The weight surprises you. $127 million should feel heavier. It doesn't. It feels like groceries. You exit the building at 3:08 a.m., 7 minutes before Peter's next round. Gavin picks you up in a car that will be burned within the hour. Noor removes her device from the server room and leaves through the front entrance at 7:15 a.m. with the morning office workers carrying a laptop bag and a coffee, indistinguishable from every other person entering a building that doesn't yet know it's been emptied. Level 5, the Unraveling. The discovery happens at 8:40 a.m. Monday morning when the first dealer opens his box and finds it empty. By 9:15, the building is sealed. By 10, Belgian federal police are on site. By noon, Interpol is involved. The media calls it the heist of the century. $127 million. 123 boxes. No alarms triggered. No guards injured. No evidence left behind except the absence of everything that used to be there. Except you did leave evidence. Not in the vault. In the garbage. Croft had arranged for the bags to be transferred to a safe house outside the city, where the diamonds would be sorted, graded, and distributed through his network over a period of 18 months. The transfer happened at 4:30 a.m. in a parking lot behind a supermarket. You handed off the bags and drove to your apartment and sat on the kitchen floor for an hour, shaking. Not from fear, but from the chemical aftermath of adrenaline that had been sustaining you for 6 hours and was now leaving your body like a tide going out. The garbage was your undoing. Gavin had disposed of the operational waste, gloves, the polyethylene shield, food wrappers, a partially eaten sandwich, in a dumpster near the building. He'd been meticulous about everything except the sandwich. His DNA was on the bread. Belgian forensics found it 3 days later. Gavin's profile was in the system from a prior arrest in the UK. They had his name within a week. They had his location within 2. They had him in an interrogation room within 3. Gavin held for 11 days. Then he gave them everything. Your name, Noor's name, Croft's name, the safe house, the distribution network, the insurance investigator who'd switched sides because of a denied cancer claim, broke under the weight of 30 years in a Belgian prison, and chose 8 years instead. You can't blame him. You can calculate the math he did. 30 versus 8. The arithmetic of self-preservation doesn't allow for loyalty. They arrested you in Marseille. Your mother's apartment. You'd gone back because Marseille was where you went when the world got too large and you needed it to shrink back to a size you recognized. 2 Belgian federal agents and 4 French police officers at 6 a.m. on a Wednesday. Your mother was making coffee. She watched them handcuff you in her kitchen, in the apartment where your father had taught you about tumblers and pins and the geometry of security. She didn't cry. She set down the coffee pot and sat at the table and folded her hands and looked at you with an expression that contained everything she'd chosen not to ask about for 16 years. The trial lasted 4 months. You were convicted of theft, breaking and entering, and conspiracy. 15 years in a Belgian federal prison. Noor got 10. Croft got 12. Gavin got 8 for his cooperation. The diamonds were never fully recovered. $83 million was traced through Croft's network and seized. The remaining $44 million disappeared into a market that absorbs stolen stones the way the ocean absorbs rain. Indistinguishably, permanently. Level 6. The cell. You're in a cell in Bruges. 6 years served. 9 remaining. The cell is 9 by 11 feet. A window that faces a courtyard where pigeons gather on the ledge every morning at 7. You've named them because naming things is what people do when their world contracts to the dimensions of a room. You get letters from your mother. She writes every 2 weeks. She never mentions the arrest. She writes about the neighborhood, the bakery that closed, the new family that moved into the apartment below hers. Normal things from a normal life that she maintains with the discipline of a woman who decided long ago that her son's choices would not define her days. You think about the vault sometimes, not the diamonds. The door. The moment the combination worked and the lock clicked and the door opened. The specific sound of a mechanism surrendering. Your father spent his life opening locks for people who'd lost their keys. You spent yours opening locks for different reasons. The technique was identical. The geometry was the same. The only difference was what you did after the door opened, and that difference is 15 years in a cell in Bruges, with pigeons on the ledge and letters from your mother, and the memory of $127 million that felt like groceries and cost you everything that can't be carried in a nylon bag. Gavin wrote you once, a postcard from London, no return address, 1 sentence. He said he was sorry about the sandwich. You read it and almost laughed, which was the closest you'd come to laughing in 6 years. A $127 million heist undone by a half-eaten sandwich in a dumpster. Your father would have appreciated the craftsmanship of the job. He would have been destroyed by the reason for it. You keep the postcard in the same book where you keep your mother's letters, evidence of the 2 people who shaped you into what you became. One who taught you how locks worked. One who taught you that knowing how something works and knowing what to do with that knowledge are not the same lesson.